All right, good job. Joel and Peter, you guys are ready to go? As Joel got up, sorry about that one.
No, I'm fine. I'm ready.
All right, great, everyone. We're gonna call this meeting, I guess, to order now. I'm not that sorry. I'm used to working groups. Evening, all. Welcome to, I think it's the 7th or 8th quarterly wildfire speaker series. My name's Andy Spurk. I'm with the Ventura County Resource Conservation District. This session is going to be focusing on wildfire and insurance. Before we start the meeting tonight, we do have a packed agenda. I want to do a little bit of house cleaning first, so just bear with me for just a minute here. I want to first thank everyone for taking the time out of your Tuesday to be with us. I know we all probably have better things to do this evening. And of course, a big thank you to all of our presenters tonight. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to engage with our community. I'd also like to note that this is funded by CAL FIRE and the California Climate Investments, and in partnership with the Ventura County Wildfire Collaborative, which is a working group that spans across Ventura County to reduce the threat of the next wildfire. You can learn more in a minute. I'm going to send a few links in the chat that will link to the Wildfire Collaborative. I will also want to put in a note that the next speaker series is actually to occur next month, the next wildfire speaker series. It's going to occur next month on Tuesday, July 5th at 6 p.m. I'll talk about that at the end of this meeting, what that looks like. And lastly, please feel free to use the chat function to type in questions or raise your hand. We'll answer questions at the end of each presentation. And at the very end of both presentations tonight, we will be holding a Q&A session. And with that, one last thing to note is one of our presenters, Jason, is not able to make the meeting tonight. He did fall ill. He is doing okay, but we just have 2 presenters tonight. So more time for questions and answers, I guess. So with that, let's get started. Our first presenter today will be Peter Meza, who's Associate Insurance Compliance Officer at the California Department of Insurance. So Peter, you feel free to share. You're on it. Perfect. Seamless. All right, take it away, Peter.
Thank you so much for the invitation. We're very grateful that the department can come and speak to your community and share some of the things that are going on with the department, especially with these issues that we're dealing with wildfires and the rates and non-renewals and these other things that really are impacting your constituents and those in your community. So thank you so much on behalf of the department. We're grateful. My coworker, Zulemi Gonzalez, is assigned to that particular area, and she's going to be helping me with the slides today. So I really do thank everybody here. Thank my coworker. Let me just talk to you about the Safe from Wildfire framework. This is an important program, I guess, your framework that we've been working on. And my goodness, I believe that it is really something that could really make a difference. And so we're going to share with you the ideas and this whole new framework. And it's connected to regulations that we're hoping will take effect as soon as they're filed with the Secretary of State of California. So let me go ahead and start with the next slide. So I'm going to talk about the role of the insurance commissioner, and it's important that we understand that he has a certain role that is given to him according to the Prop 103 and other things that are codified in the regulations and the insurance code. So the role of the insurance commissioner is to protect consumers by ensuring a fair and competitive insurance market. There's a balance between keeping the insurers competitive with their, being able to be competitive in the market, but at the same time, being fair and making sure that they are taking care of the consumer. So the role of part of the role is also to maintain insurer solvency as through appropriate property and casualty rates, conducting market conduct reviews, resolving consumer complaints, and investigating and prosecuting insurance fraud. These are all important things. So insurance also enforce the insurance laws of California. Any changes to the insurance code require legislation. So we just can't just get in there and change things. There are certain authorities that he does have and he can do, but he can't just change the insurance code. You cannot require or compel or mandate insurers to sell commercial insurance to any given policyholder in any particular area. So you must understand that. Let's go to the next slide. There are approximately, and I like to brag a little bit if you don't mind, just, I don't know if you say brag, but you need to know as a community what we're doing and that we've been out there. We have a group of outreach folks that have really been out in the community along with the insurance commissioner. And we've met with, which is kind of incredible when you think about it, 25,000 people, you know, over wildfire issues and other insurance issues. We've had 60 virtual events. Actually, it's beyond that now in 40 counties. And that's since 2019. We're just getting out there, talking to people, getting their feedback, you know, finding the different things that are unique to certain communities. I've been in Paradise about 8 times, talking to the community. And you know, every community seems to have something unique, you know, and interesting about it. And when you start talking to individuals, you start talking to the community leaders, they start mentioning something, you're like, wow, that's really good. You know, we write it down and we try to bring that back, and so that we can discuss this and see what can be done for these communities, you know, with regards to, you know, what they're facing with, you know, the different issues that they're dealing with. Let's go to the next slide. From 2019 to 2021, we've been able to, the insurance commissioners, I've actually been able to place the 1-year moratorium. And a lot of folks, if you don't know about this, there was a bill that was passed, SB 824. And this was something that actually the insurance commissioner, when he was a senator, had the opportunity to be sponsor it and be involved as a senator to bring it forth. So it has actually protected over 4 million homeowners, you know, from non-renewal. So he can basically place a moratorium on insurers from non-renewals, from placing these non-renewals on folks that have just been in a disaster, a declared disaster, and also the surrounding area, the zip codes. So there are designated zip codes around the area that are also under the moratorium. There has also been an increase of the non-renewal notice. It used to be 45 days forever, and we were able to get that upgraded. You could say upticked a little bit better to 75 days. We know 75 days still is not a whole lot of time, but it's a lot better than 45 days. It gives you that time from the moment you receive your notice to start seeking alternative, you know, insurance and so forth. So that's something that, you know, we're always looking to improve. We want to we have increased wild survivor insurance benefits through legislation. There's a lot of different legislation that's been passed to correct some things, add some extra features that that help the policies. It kind of, once it's declared disaster, it kind of changes the policy, stretches out certain things, certain requirements that aren't needed. You know, these people have been victimized, and then they're asked to fill out these paperwork, and particular paperwork from the insurance companies. And, you know, we've stopped a lot of that stuff. So we, of course, this is the first time there's been an actual partnership with the Governor Newsom's office to establish a statewide home hardening, their actual standards. So now it's across the board, and it's a partnership with several state agencies. So I'm probably going to touch a little bit more on that as we go further. Next slide. So one thing, the actions that CDI has done is we're looking for comprehensive solutions, and one of them is on improving the FAIR plan. You know, the FAIR plans, since I would say for about 20 years at minimum, had been kind of set with a limit, and people have been complaining these limits are not really cutting it. You know, business owners only had like 3.5 million, and that has been increased. The BOP policies, as they call them, been increased to over $7 million. The same thing with commercial property insurance has been increased from I think it was 4.5 million to about 8.5 million. And then, of course, for residential, the dwelling coverage has been increased from $1.5 million to $3 million. So, it's given a lot of more room. And, we know still there are folks that maybe cannot get in, have sufficient, with 3 million may not be sufficient, but it's a lot better than $1.5 million. And I did talk to a lot of folks from the Laguna Niguel, or the coastal fire that just happened about a month ago or less. They're dealing with those issues right now. A couple of them were in the Fairfield. Let me go to the next slide. So let me talk here. This is where we really get into the nitty gritty. This is what we are really excited about. This is the comprehensive solution that we're looking for. It's the Safer from Wildfire. It's that framework. So it's a partnership between Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara and the emergency agencies in Governor Newsom's office. The administration, so it's to protect lives and homes and businesses by reducing wildfire risk. This includes the Department of Insurance, the Governor's Office of Emergency Services, CAL FIRE, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, and the CPCU. And it's the first of its kind. That's what makes it so exciting, because it's a first of its kind effort to certify achievable and effective strategies for homes, businesses, and communities. And it was announced in February of 2022, just this year. We announced this whole framework, and it's connected to the new regulations that actually went into, they haven't gone into effect, but we had public hearings April 13th, and we had a hybrid presentation. People were on Zoom, people were doing virtual, and others were in the actual hearing room. We were there till the last person spoke. We waited, we even went beyond the actual time. So it was exciting. So let me talk about this framework. So we like to call it the 1, 2, 3. Safer from wildfires includes first with the individual home. So we're protecting the individual structure, the structure with Class A fire rated roof, maintain a 5-foot ember resistant, get back here, resistant zone around a home, including a fence within 5 feet, non-combustible 6 inches at the bottom of the exterior walls, ember resistant, fire resistant vents. You can see the low cost retrofit list, and it's in the building codes chapter 7A. Many folks know what I'm talking about. Upgraded windows, double paned and added shutters, and closed eaves. These are all protecting the individual structure. The individual structure. So that's where we start. Then we go beyond the individual structure, which is protecting the immediate surroundings. So now we are going into cleared vegetation and debris from under the decks, removal of combustible sheds and other outbuildings from the immediate surroundings of the home to at least 30 feet. Defensible space compliance, including trimming trees and removal of brush and debris from the yard, and compliance with state law and local ordinances. So this is part number 2. We start with the home structure, number 1. Number 2 is the surrounding area around the structure. And then last but not least, this is important. Now we're getting into the community, and that was a discussion that happened with Paradise. They kept saying, hey, what if we could do something unique? The city has burned down completely, almost 80% of it seemed to have burned down. And they said, what if we can do something to make it attractive for insurers to say, hey, you're not only doing individual mitigation, but you're doing a community effort. And so that's what this is about. Number 3 is about the working together as a community. A community should have clearly defined boundary and a local risk assessment in consultation with the local fire district or fire agency, an identified evacuation route, clear to vegetative sources to implement community mitigation activities, and meet clear risk reduction goals, and integrated and up-to-date local planning documents pertinent to the community wildfire risk. So there are current examples. These examples include the fire risk reduction community designation that is under the development by the Board of Forestry, and also designation like Firewise USA communities, which are in good standing, and of course shelter-in-place designations. Many of you are very familiar with these different types of designations. So this is what number 3 is about: the community working together, trying to make an effort so that it's not just number one, the home or the structure, and then number two, the surrounding area, but let's get the whole community involved. Let's get it, so that it's a safe community in every way to the best of the ability. And these are the criteria that we're looking for in this framework, the Safer from Wildfire framework. So how do you prepare? Inspect your home structure and check the roof gutters, the plumbing, defensible space, and potential fuel sources. You got some of that, fuel around there, whether it's propane tanks or what, what do you have there? You need to understand what it is that could potentially cause a problem for you. Consider contacting your local or county fire department for a risk assessment of your property. Many of them, I've heard many of them, Cal Fire and other local fire agencies are willing to come out and look at they can give you a risk assessment. Meet community leaders, become a designated fire risk reduction community, as I indicated, like Firewires USA, and then be active in speaking to elected officials about issues and solutions. So become active, become aware of these things. It's important that we understand these things. So I believe it's the last slide. We are finished here. And if anybody has any questions, I don't know if we're going to take them now or we're going to wait till the end.
No, perfect. Thank you so much for that, Peter. I appreciate it. And just so people know on this call, I'm going to put in our information locally, but we also do evaluations. So do our colleagues who we work with, they do evaluations, and we work with County Fire to try to strategize and standardize it. So we're a resource for that too, and can connect you if you want your home evaluated for safety. But yeah, let's look at the questions. I think some stuff popped in to the chat. Feel free to raise your hand digitally and we can unmute you, and you can ask a question that way. Type it into the chat, whatever works. Give me just a minute here. So we do have a question from Doug. It's a little bit long, so just bear with me for a minute. If you can't force an insurer to insure someone, how does the non-renewal moratorium work? Seems like the insurer is being forced to insure someone that they don't want to insure. Is this paid for by the state?
Well, the non-renewal is a 1-year moratorium. So it's, just saying, you can't, somebody's in the middle of a disaster. And the worst thing you can have is them dealing not only with the disaster, the rebuilding of their home, but also they're dealing with, the non-renewal. So that's just a non-renewal is just a temporary moratorium. And there are issues, of course, you have to deal with after. And we're hoping that, insurers, will do the right thing. But it is not costing the state anything or anything like that. I mean, this is something that's built into what the insurers, consider their loss. And so, they have to set certain reserves and make sure they have the right amounts for that. So.
Thank you, Peter. And then another question kind of that touched on it. Does the department offer a certification for hardened home, essentially?
Well, that would be done through the agencies, that we've talked about. So if you got the designation, how it is done through, the safer, what is it? I mentioned earlier, the safer in place, shelter in place. Those are designations that are done by certain agencies. And so those are the kind of designations that are done, but the department doesn't necessarily do that. It would be through these state agencies or other government agencies.
Yeah, local. We got another question that popped in here. In the future, will failure to comply with Safer from Wildfire provisions allow insurance companies to deny or cancel coverage?
Okay, so the insurance companies are required to abide by the framework that is being put forth. So if you look at their actual regulations, it requires them, if they are considering if they're using models, these risk models, then they have to go into and abide by all the different what the Safer from Wildfire, framework is. So.
Perfect. We got one more question here we'll take, and then we're going to move over to Joel's. And of course, we'll have questions and answers at the end too, everyone. I'm familiar with a lot of CAL FIRE's information and its related agencies, but never see anything about manufactured homes. Where can I go? That's an interesting question, I guess. So Michelle, I'm guessing you're asking about manufactured homes in terms of defensible space and doing home hardening. Are we talking about when you guys say when they say manufactured homes, do you think they're talking about tracts or like mobile homes? Mobile homes. Okay. I haven't seen much info on mobile homes with defensible space. I don't know if you guys have, but my assumption is, right, followed by the same standards for the most part, what you can do. Of course, yeah, there's some stuff that's just not going to work for a mobile home. See how you can adapt it. But again, that's something where you can reach out to your local agencies, such as the Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council or myself with the Ventura County RCD, and we can come out and give you our opinion on an as-needed kind of basis. So maybe we'll connect Michelle offline and I'll give you my info there. All right, guys, so we're gonna move on to our next presenter here. So perfect, feel free. And then Heidi, if you want to share your screen here for a minute. So we have our next presenter, Joel Locher, I think I got that right, with United Policyholders. All right, Joel, I'm gonna give it away to you at this point.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Andy, and thank you for having us. United Policyholders, I think, is well known for assisting in disaster areas, helping policyholders deal with their insurance issues, their claims issues, especially those with total losses or with smoke damage in wildfire scenarios. And we've done a lot of work actually in Ventura County in past fires. So hopefully people have a good sense of what United Policyholders does. I'm very grateful to be able to represent them tonight. I used to work with the Department of Insurance myself, and it's great to see Peter online here. Despite the fact that United Policyholders has focused much of its energy on claim issues, because of this issue with homeowners insurance availability and affordability, we've become very engaged in this issue in this last couple of years and started our own initiative, this Wildfire Risk Reduction and Asset Protection Initiative, focusing on many of these same issues that Peter talked about in relation to mitigation actions for your home. So next slide, please, Heidi. So just a little bit about United Policyholders quickly. We're a nonprofit. If you did work with us after an event, we never charge the homeowner anything. Everything's funded through grants. So our efforts are completely free to the claimant or policyholder, and we work in all states. So not for sale, not influenced by insurers, funded entirely by donations and grants. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit about your insurance availability and affordability issues, and talk first about how things mostly work today in terms of wildfire risk modeling, and what's influenced both your premium costs and whether you're able to continue coverage with an insurer or whether you get non-renewed in today's marketplace. Here you see kind of a satellite image through a map of an area in Ventura, actually. And that red circle kind of represents the targeting the insurer is doing of a particular home in Ventura that it's underwriting. So in the very center of that red circle is the home being evaluated through a wildfire risk model. The three components of risk that the model is able to kind of identify from this level of satellite imagery has to do just three components: the slope that the home is on, the amount of fuel in the vicinity of the home, which may be just the area in that red circle. Sometimes the target area is larger if there's a wind issue in the area typically. And then the access to the home. As you can see from this satellite imagery, there would be no consideration in most current models of anything specific to the home itself, right? You can't tell anything about the roof or the clearance or the vents whatsoever. And so all of much of the wildfire underwriting today really does not take into account at all anything you've done at your individual property level, and really not much in terms of community property level. So next slide, please, Heidi. And so that was in terms of evaluating underwriting to determine if you're going to be written or offered coverage or not. The other way that that same type of model with those three considerations plays into today's homeowners insurance market is the rate level you're going to pay. So the higher your wildfire risk score, the higher your premium goes. And, you know, since this is something that has only been implemented in the last decade or so, a lot of people in higher hazard areas have seen their premiums double and triple over this last decade. And this is actually a graph taken from an insurer's, large insurer's rate filing. And what these bars represent here is a little complicated, but this represents how much the insurer wants to increase its premium and is asking the department's approval of those increases based on wildfire risk scores. This happens to be a core logic risk model that this insurer uses that goes from 0 to 100. 0 to 60 is generally low risk. 60 to 70 is moderate. 70 to 79 also moderate. And then it gets in the high and very high as you approach 100. Well, you can see in this chart, this actually shows what they charge now in the blue bar, what they intend to charge if they get the approved rates in the green bar, and what their data actually shows in their actuarial opinion, what they should be charging. And you can see at the very left-hand side, the low risk business, they're not asking for much of any increase at all. If you go to the far right, you are seeing that this insurer is looking to more than double its premium in its highest risk areas, and is telling the department in the yellow bar that it should be charging even higher, but it's not asking to go there in this filing. So you can see the higher your score goes, the greater the increase the insurer is asking for, even though the current rates already reflected generally higher rates than the rates for that 0 to 59 score. So it just shows you that rates are kind of skyrocketing for people in wildfire risk areas and continue to go up. And again, this is based on those models that are only looking at those three things about your home: that the slope you're on, the fuel load nearby, and access. Nothing about your individual property. So next slide, please, Heidi. But the good news for those who do mitigate is that things are starting to change. And this is actually from a report that was combined from a modeler, Zesty, that does a more detailed property review, and IBHS that does studies of the impacts of home hardening on reducing losses. And they produced a report and this is looking at properties from aerial imagery. So you're getting a lot closer than satellite imagery. And so you get a lot more detail of the property. And what that report stated was that there is evidence, both in the field and in the studies that IBHS has done, that if you reduce the fuel load around your home, the home is more likely to survive a wildfire and thus should be more eligible, for insurers and at a reduced rate than they charge, just based on a wildfire risk score from that kind of satellite view. So next slide, please. So that's a great advance. So kind of working with that same concept and kind of furthering this consideration of property level and community level mitigation and their impacts is the regulations Peter just talked about a moment ago, that the department is considering that would require insurers to include consideration of community level and property level mitigation actions in their rates. So they'd have to give a discount if you took these steps. Now, hopefully, I know we have an audience here that sadly is willing to listen to someone talk about insurance on their evening, but I'm probably preaching to the choir a little bit about people who are doing mitigation actions. But the good news here is that we're looking at the likelihood of insurance rewards for those actions, which didn't exist in the previous wildfire models, especially if these regulations go through. Now, it doesn't mandate that if you're in a very high wildfire area, that the insurer would have to write coverage for you, even if you take all these actions. So this is the kind of limitation of the regulations. It is meant for the insureds that an insurer is willing to write. It means there will be a discount for those who take these actions versus those who don't. But it's also likely that over time, insurers are going to focus on writing people who take mitigation actions as well, since they're going to be obligated to determine whether those actions have been taken or not. So next slide, please. And the reason that the department is going there, and this ties in with the Safer from Wildfires project that Peter just spoke about, but it also is consistent with IBHS's own wildfire prepared home and the work we've done at United Policyholders in our wildfire risk reduction and asset protection initiative is identified that fire scientists and underwriters alike have identified that there are many steps that have proven, as shown in that report, to be effective in diminishing the risk of loss of a property. And insurance itself, the rates charged and eligibility are all founded on what is the risk of loss of this property? The lower risk means the more likely the insurer wants to write the property, and the lower risk means relatively to another property, it should receive a lower rate. So now they're looking at these aspects of the property details they overlooked before, and they're seeing they do make a significant difference in risk. Next slide, please. So the good news is, the steps you can take are the ones that Peter talked about here. You don't have to build, put your house in the middle of a lake separated by, 100 yards of waterfront to protect your property. And next slide, Heidi. And you don't have to build a 40-foot high parapets around your home either. It's actually much easier to accomplish than either of these homes, although hopefully these homeowners were also rewarded with discounts. The next slide, please. So at United Policyholders, been several months ago now, we identified a list of mitigation actions that we felt were going to be effective, and got the input of fire scientists and academics from Cal Poly and UC Cooperative and IBHS to validate a list that we came up with, not of our own doing, but from input from experts of actions that are effective in reducing the risk of loss. And next slide, please. So this list is, you will find very similar to the list for Safer from Wildfires. It is similar to the wildfire prepared homes because there is a commonality of the research. And so you might hear that there are, 10 different lists out there from Fire Safe Communities or Firewise or IBHS, the Department of Insurance. But I think the key here is that there is a huge commonality in all of these lists of things that are effective to mitigate your property from wildfire risk. Next slide, please. And it moves out from the home. It's similar to Peter's, same kind of detail, working from your home outward to your defensible space of your property. And ultimately, of course, you would love the community engagement. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, the list, here's the features of the United Policyholders list that kind of came out a little bit before these other two lists, but they're very similar, almost identical to the state agency partnership that list that Peter talked about, Safer from Wildfire list, and the IBHS Wildfire Prepared Home. I would say something about that IBHS list. It is that entity's intent to create a certification program where the homeowner will pay for an inspector to come out that is certified through IBHS to conduct their inspections, who will certify that the home has met those standards. So it's very possible that insurers will like that approach, in that it might save them from having to send their own inspectors out. One of the things why insurers like those satellite wildfire models so much is that they could make decisions without ever visiting the property, so that saves them time and expense. But the fact is, the newer image, more granular image that you get from the aerial photography is actually enabling closer views of the property anyway. And I think there's going to be a way to do these inspections and validate that the homeowner has maintained the property without doing inspections year after year. But the main point here is that the list of mitigation actions are nearly identical from one list to the other. So start in on any one of these things and it's to your benefit. Next slide, please. And same goes for, again, recommendations from fire safe councils. Next slide, please. Consistent with our 7A codes that generally apply to new construction, but are kind of developed for the higher risk areas. And so these recommendations are consistent basically with those 7A codes. Next slide, please. And so, the key is, we would say to anyone who's, starting down this path, do the easy things first. A lot of these things are pretty inexpensive to do. Even the vents, changing the vents out is a fairly low cost thing. Some of the things that are harder are the Class A roof, but luckily, probably 90% of the homes in California already have what would qualify as a Class A roof for this purpose. But, it's just getting started and focusing on those first 5 feet away from your home, along with the, the home structure itself. Next slide, please. So it's all about just getting started, right? And as you, kind of get motivated here to do what you can, now we have the incentive of expectation of better insurance availability and affordability. That's starting to happen, not only, I'll say, just through new iterations of tech, through that greater imagery and detail, but also from the regulations and from scientific studies of the effectiveness of these mitigation actions. Next slide, please. And so one thing I always like to add on behalf of United policyholders, because we deal with so many folks and try our best to assist folks who have had a loss, the number one issue that people face, a challenge when they do have a wildfire loss, is that they are underinsured. And that just gets you started on the whole, the wholly wrong foot to be able to rebuild your home and your life. So I ask everybody who sees this video or is listening tonight to take a look at your homeowner's limits. Or here I showed the example. Do you have a $500,000 limit on your 2,000 square foot home? That might be kind of common in some policies out there. That equates to about $250 a square foot in construction cost. That won't come near to rebuilding a home in most of California, or most homes. Most homes are going to need at least $350 a square foot, and some much more than that in terms of the rebuild. It's, cost of construction are much higher in the current marketplace. But, if you have a lot that's on a slope, or you have nice finishes in your house in terms of countertops and windows, they can drive costs up to $500 and $600 and $700 and more a square foot. So please be sure at least your limits are in the range of reasonable to rebuild your home. Hopefully you'll never need that coverage, and you can always resent your insurance premium, but and hopefully you will continue to resent it and never get to take advantage of it because you won't need it. But you do want to have the right coverage there for you if you do need it. And that concludes my presentation, and I would welcome questions as well. So
Great.
Check out United Policyholders online. Lots of information about shopping for insurance and helping you search the market, which can be very challenging today.
Great. Thank you so much, Joe. I really do appreciate it. And I do just want to echo his last sentiment there about updating your homeowner's insurance. Oftentimes we get, as the RCD, we get funding to go in and restore people's landscape post-wildfire. And a lot of people who got their homes burned didn't update their homeowner's insurance, and the insurance couldn't even pay out for the landscape. So, and there's requirements after a fire, what you have to do to stabilize your landscape from the county or city governments. So it's very important that you go and revise all of that. I ran into that multiple times, especially with older homes too.
Yeah.
We'll forget. So great. Thank you, Joel, for that. We do have, so feel free to pop some questions in the chat right now. We do have a question from Doug. Oh, it's vanished. Let me go find it. I was just going to my right. What is the new status of the legislation, and what is the new status of the legislation, and what is the status of the IBHS certification? Many groups now doing assessments. When can we expect better affordability on insurance if we can make home and community improvements? I think that's a general question.
I'll start in, I guess, since I'm on here, is, well, the regulations, what Peter talked about, those discounts are actually regulations. So as opposed to legislation. So they've had a hearing, the department chooses when to move forward. And I would expect they will, maybe Peter can chime in there in the next few months. It's possible the insurance industry will fight those, but I will say, and then, they could be delayed. But my experience is that insurers are currently already moving to the more granular risk models. And as that happens, you'll find that you will start getting these discounts with insurers within the next few months, because these models take into account whether you've done the clearance and whether you have a Class A roof, age of your home. They can see whether there's a tree growing over your roof line. So it's already happening with insurers who get the more granular models. And so you really have to shop around and see if you can find another insurer with a lower rate who will write you.
And I will chime in. I mean, Joel is completely correct. Everything he stated. I know that in 2019, only 12% of insurers were taking into consideration these home hardening, efforts by individuals, and now over 40% of the market, which is, large, over 12 insurers, I believe, which represent 40% of the market, are actually, giving discounts based on that. So, we feel like we're moving the right direction. And as far as regulations, it's with the Office of Administrative Law, and hopefully these things are filed and completed with the Secretary of State by the end of, or sometime this summer. And of course, there's a period where insurers have to, they have a certain amount of time to file any updates on their rating. So I think it's 180 days.
Yeah, I'll mention the IBHS program. They indicated they plan to roll that out later this year. They're going to have 2 levels, and I think they're going to roll out the easier first level earlier, and as a trial run in certain communities in California. So it's still a little bit of a work in progress, but their plan was to roll it out by end of summer, as I understood it.
All right. Well, thank you guys for the insight. Really do appreciate that. Looks like that was the end of our questions here. So I'd just like to conclude the meeting here. So one thing I do want to know for everyone on the call, we talked a lot about home hardening. You guys can see behind me, we have a demonstration home hardening garden in Somis, which is a community garden with signage. So you can do your self tours, but we also offer private tours where we give toolkits. This is an old photo, so the plants are a little bit bigger. They've changed out and we've updated it a bit. So feel free to reach out. But with that, thanks to everyone for a great meeting tonight. I appreciate the questions and engagement from the community and the willingness from both insurers to discuss. Our next speaker series will occur next month on Tuesday, July 5th at 6 p.m. And it's actually going to discuss wildfire prevention efforts across the county that are occurring. So presenters are going to range from County Fire to the Ventura County Prescribed Burn Association, Prescribed Grazers, and Ventura County Regional Fire Safe Council. So please note that I did provide in the chat, if you want to look real quick, links to our wildfire list servers where you can receive important email updates about wildfires, such as quarterly wildfire newsletters, funding opportunities, recovery and prevention funding that we sometimes offer, announcements for assessments, and much more. So I encourage you to sign up to our list servers for wildfire. I also included a link in the chat to our previous speaker series recordings, so you can access those recordings and share them. That is also the location that this recording will be posted within 1 week. So I encourage you to share that information with any of your neighbors or anyone else in the wildland urban interface, because as we always say, right, remember that we are only as prepared as our neighbors at the end of the day. With that, we'll conclude today's meeting. So thanks again, and I look forward to seeing everyone next month. I'll stay online for any additional questions or comments. But yeah, have a great evening, everyone, and thank you for taking the time. All righty.
Thank you.